Welcome back. Welcome to another edition of Nain's Shorts. Thank you for joining me. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Um, training. Yeah, it's all we really talk about. It's all that really kind of runs through our heads. People that train on a regular basis, that have been doing it for many, many years, understands how involved it becomes, how much of your life is spent not just doing it, but thinking about stuff. So that's what this is about. Just the stuff we think about that we may or may not say out loud, that we may or may not have forgotten, and are trying to kind of keep on the forefront of our minds so we can keep advancing. Ultimately, that's all this is about, getting better and better and better. Hopefully. I don't know if any of this is helping, but hey, here we are. I know it's helping me, so I'm going to keep doing it. And in reference to that, for those of you who don't know, I also train Kaju Kempo with GM Bob Gomez. And my training partner, Robert, uh, the nicest guy. He's 6'2", 190 something. Actually, I think he's 200 now. Jesus. Just gym rat. Great guy, very nice, but it's becoming more and more difficult to play with him and train because he's just getting that good. And lately, we've been having a lot of classes, just the two of us, just training, going back and forth as black belts. We're exchanging ideas. And last time we played, we started talking about the things that we don't really talk about in training. For example, the concept of understanding what's happening in front of you in real time, because you can't train for every possible scenario and you can't train for every possible outcome. I'm sure people have tried or they're still in the process of doing so, but again, things are constantly changing. So, what becomes very important in a real life situation, self defense, is information. But how do we go about gathering that information? What sort of information do we start picking up on? And honestly, in the Bladed Mind, I was taught that that information starts in training. You have to look at things on both sides. Like, for example, in Kaju Kempo, we have our punch arts. Punch art 1A, which, anyways, in the air. So bear with me. Somebody throws a right punch, step off to the side, parry, outside block, I kick, I drop down into their arm, and then I punch them in the face. Awesome. Now, you start it slow, you start doing it in the air, then your training partner punches you, and most often than not, and I've realized this now as I'm saying it, it starts off a little bit further than it needs to be because that punch never actually gets to your face. Now, it gets close, so you can do the technique and all that, but your training partner is usually also starting off with you as a white belt, and they're not comfortable with actually punching through your face. So, first of all, that's already an unrealistic punch at the beginning, but it's understandable because you're just learning the motion. So, but that's also information that becomes relevant later on because as you progress, that punch should get closer and closer to actually hitting you. Otherwise, it's not a realistic response. Secondly, what is the other person doing once they get to the point where they're actually close enough to punch you? Now, what does that look like? Somebody just throwing a punch. And then however long it takes that person to do the technique. But would a real attacker do that? First of all, well, no, they probably wouldn't. They wouldn't hold out their arm long enough for you to do the technique. So how do you go around that? And this is the information that you start picking up that starts augmenting the way you go about doing things. You can't do it the way it was taught, but that doesn't mean you can't do it. The question is, how? And this is where that thought process starts happening where, okay, that person's not going to hold out their arm. So what do? Well, you learn to do it fluidly. You learn to do it to a point where it just comes out so natural that maybe that person doesn't have the time to think of something else or pull back. Or even the moves themselves, they're no longer broken up and become just this one fluid thing where you can get everything else that comes along with it. But maybe the fighter is savvy. Maybe they didn't even throw a straight right punch to begin with. So would you be able to use that technique when you don't even have the first element to it, which is somebody throwing this punch? What if it's a haymaker? What if they throw a left? What if they throw a kick? What if they throw a feint? All these questions then start developing how you're able to then assess what best to use in that situation. And the simple answer for most martial arts is learn more techniques. Learn other techniques that require that. And to a certain degree, I agree completely. There are certain situations where the techniques that you have now may not be adequate for it. However, how do you process that in real time when you're freaking out, when your brain is not all there, or maybe you're already got hit and now you have to scramble to figure out what the hell you're going to do? Because fear and panic are very real things. And if we don't even consider the idea that we're going to be in that state, well, how likely are we to recover from it long enough to do something significant in a real fight? And that's where this thought process goes into play, because it's not a matter of, okay, what if? It's more of a just conjecture that, hey, this might not work. So how do I build around it so I can make it work, or I can make something work over time? And it really just can start off as, will this person actually attack me this way? And if not, what would be a more realistic way that they would attack me? And it starts off with just having your uke getting close enough to hit you, or even going beyond that and getting close enough to go through your face. So then you at least have a good sense of what a real punch would feel like. The other person is not trying to harm you. They're not malicious in any way. So even that is something to consider, because your training partner hopefully doesn't hate you. The other person that's attacking you in real life might have a great disdain for you and really wants to harm you. So thinking of both sides of the fight then becomes essential to being able to process that information. And again, it's not going to happen the same way or exactly the same way. But what you're training your brain to do is to constantly be aware of everything that's going on around you, what we call the 360 idea. So if you're training your brain to constantly be thinking of both sides of the fight, of everything that's being given, everything that's being received, and the possibilities that you have within that time, well, then definitely your brain is going to probably default to what it does the most. So if in class you're thinking of both sides of the fight and how to get around situations, well, then maybe your brain is going to do that in real life outside of the class as well, especially when you're not conscious of what's actually going on. You hear it all the time. You do what you train the most. So what you're training is to process information, well, then that's probably what you're going to do even when you're not conscious of it. Now, what does that really end up being like? Well, for us, the thought process becomes very clear in the sense that if I give my opponent enough time, they're going to figure out a way to do something or even circumvent whatever technique I'm doing. So that means, how do I then remove that time from them? And for us, being close quarter eliminates a lot of that time. But what does that really mean? Does it mean I'm constantly going to get close to my opponent in certain situations? Sure, that might be the way to go. Take punch art 1A, for example. The first step is off to the side, but I'm not moving laterally to get away from that punch. I'm actually moving forward, getting off center, but also getting closer to my opponent. Now, why would I do that? Well, because this outside block isn't out here. I'm not extending my arms. I'm not trying to reach the punch. The punch is actually at my face, and I'm just moving enough out of the way so I don't get hit. And this replaces it so I know where that arm is, or even becoming a strike as you move along. In order to do that, I have to be close enough. But here's the thing, I'm not trying to get close enough to the body. I'm trying to stay close enough to the threat. And that threat at that time is that fist, that arm. So I'm trying to make sure that I know where that arm is, and I'm destroying the crap out of it before I move on to the next step, which is the individual throwing the punch. Now, that to me is close quarter. The fist is close quarter, not the body. But what if I'm not fast enough to get out of the way? Well, they're still coming towards me, so that means that I'm still close quarter, even though I'm not the one moving. Rick?
Hey, y'all, I guess I'm the example guy.
You're the example. Well, it's more of a dummy.
You need this?
You're the dummy. That's all it
You
is.
can borrow that.
So, again, he's far away. I can't reach him. But his fist, this is close quarter. So now as I'm moving around, I'm focusing on the threat. I'm taking care of that, and now I'm close enough to actually do something significant. But what if he rushes me and I can't take that step? Oh, I'm still close quarter. My hand movements are still useful. I'm bracing for whatever's coming because he's coming in hard. He's a big dude, whatever the case may be. But now as I can take control of it, oh, now I can take the move, the step forward if I need to, and become close quarter for that. Thank you very much. And that mentality starts off very early in our training, especially with newer students, because we talk about the idea of mechanically, we're not that strong out here, but we're much stronger here. We have a lot more influence. We have a lot more mechanical strength, not physical strength, but the mechanics to be able to do something significant, essentially becoming our own little wood chipper, where everything that comes in close enough, well, it's going to get mangled. Now, that's not how we teach it, but that's how I perceived it. Because it's an idea, and that idea in my head has grown into that. For another student, it'd be something completely different. Like Rick, for example, would take that idea, and for him, it's removing the time element from the opponent. Because when somebody is this close, when their fist is as close as Rick's fist was to my face, they don't have a lot of space or forethought to change directions. But if I were to reach out to him before he even got there, guess what? He's going to see my hand doing something, and is probably going to change their mind about what they're going to do, essentially giving them an out and possibility to do something completely different. So as we process this idea over and over again, we start coming up with new concepts, new ideas, new possibilities of what we could do in response to the changes that are happening all the time. But more importantly, we're training our minds to constantly be aware of changes, not just in ourselves, but in our opponent, our environment, the people else that are around us. So we're constantly feeding our brains that information, but we're also training to do so as we go along. And if we're going to do what we train the most, well then thinking, processing information, in my opinion, would be an essential skill to have for a real life environment where you don't know what the other person knows, and they're not going to be complacent. They're not going to give you that punch so you can finish your technique. They're definitely not going to help you kick their own ass, but they're going to give you all the information that you need to be able to work around it and make your techniques work outside of the classroom. And that, well, I think would be very, very helpful. So, how do you guys go about doing that yourselves? How do you train for your minds to stay flexible and malleable so you're constantly adapting to the changing environment instead of falling into a set of movements that may or may not work in every situation? Just a thought. Thank you for joining me on another one of Nain's Short. Remember, November 15th, the VEA Martial Arts Collaborative in Manteca. Keep an eye out for that. If you haven't made plans to be there, please do so. Again, I'm going to be teaching one of the segments that particular day. Thank you again, Mike Cardenas, for that opportunity. Can't wait to see you all there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Until the next one, 3, 2, 1, cut!